Before I get into this video, if I sound weird, it's because my sinuses are trying to kill me. I am mucusy and coughing, and I don't know if I'm going to cough at any point in this. And yes, I'm still hitting the vape while this is going because I need nicotine. But I figured I should take a moment to talk about the Dead Space remake. I said a lot of different things leading up to playing the game, and I still stand by them. I stand by the opinion that I have that the Dead Space franchise was butchered by EA. Dead Space 3, while I enjoyed it, while a lot of my friends enjoyed it, was a bit of a shell of a game. The system in which you could customize your guns I thought was amazing, but it only existed because of microtransactions. The co-op was a fun addition that didn't actually hinder the single-player campaign at all, much like Fear 3. If you played Fear 3, you could play through it single-player just fine, and your buddy could join you as a different character. It never impeded it. But it was, again, a bit of a tacked-on thing, and the only negative I could probably say about it was the fact that if you're an achievement hunter who plays single player and you don't have any friends, you were locked out of completing that game because there were specific achievements to beating one, like I think it was either one or all three of the side quests that were specifically for Carver. But yeah, Dead Space 3, it was a bit of a shell of a game, and with its ending, EA basically killed the franchise. They took Visceral Games and they made them make, I think, one fucking Battlefield game. I think it was Battlefield Hardline. And then they closed them down, which EA has done this numerous times with different developers. But it really stung for Dead Space because Dead Space was a premier, new, and exciting horror franchise. Say what you will about Dead Space 3, but Dead Space 1 and 2 are fucking perfect. I'm going to go ahead and just say they're fucking perfect. Yeah, Dead Space 1, the original one, not this remake, has some clunkiness to it because you have to hold the aim button and hit X to reload, I think it was. Yeah, okay, that sucks. There's not a dedicated reload button. But here's the magic and what I've said about Callisto Protocol. In the sequel, they fixed that. You had a reload button. Every one of your buttons did something. You could reload with the square button, or X if you're on Xbox. You could use your stasis packs with triangle or Y. You could use med kits with circle or B. Everything had a dedicated button. It also had, the flying stuff that is in this remake. I'll talk about that. But no, Dead Space 1 and 2 were perfect. And I personally would have preferred to have seen a Dead Space 4. I am not one of these gamers that sits here and clings to my protagonists. I don't mind the idea of a protagonist dying if it's at least a good death, and then maybe a sequel having a different protagonist. I would have been perfectly fine with Isaac actually having died, not whatever the fuck they were doing with the Awakened DLC. I would have been perfectly fine with him dying and Dead Space 4 being Ellie taking up the mantle, but I would have preferred them have gone back to Dead Space 2's version of Ellie, not what she was in Dead Space 3 with her cleavage. Anywho, the fact that EA drug Dead Space out of the grave is probably just because they, of course, have this horror franchise under their belt. They own it. And they have seen how popular the Resident Evil series has become with remaking these old titles. It's gotten to the point where even Konami is digging the very deep grave of Silent Hill and trying to do the same thing, which I will stand by the fact that I don't think that's going to be good. I have no faith whatsoever in the Silent Hill 2 remake, and you can quote me on that. I don't think it's going to be good. But here's the thing. The Dead Space remake is good, unequivocally. Anything that I say positive in this video is going towards the developers, the people that put their blood, sweat, and tears into making a very faithful and very innovative remake. I don't want to give any kudos whatsoever to EA because fuck EA, they're the worst. But the guys that put this together did a really, really good job. So I'm going to cover three basic things. I'm going to cover, of course, the gameplay changes. I'm going to cover the ship layout changes. And then I'm going to cover the story changes. First and foremost, the gameplay. the biggest additions that I saw with the Dead Space remake was the changes to basically the zero-G environments. Because in the original Dead Space, you had to use your grab boots and cling to the sides of spaces in zero-G and yeet yourself into the void in order to reach different sections. This, of course, is something that enemies still have to do. Unfortunately, this is a small negative. Unfortunately, none of the enemies can really do shit to you in zero-G. Yeah, the lurkers can still launch stuff at you, but they can't do shit because you can fly around like a fucking space ranger and they're still doing the same thing where they cling to the side and yeet. And I think it would have been interesting if they had given them some sort of ability to float around or anything, which was, you know, I don't remember if there was something in Dead Space 2 where enemies could float around, but I do remember there being the enemies that specifically launched like a bunch of projectiles at you. But either way, I think that they did a good job with incorporating the zero-G from Dead Space 2 into this remake. While I'm thinking about it, one small negative. The only two enemies that I ever remember encountering in zero-G were the lurkers, which I know what they're called, the little baby monsters with the tentacles. And I can't remember what the other things are called. They have a human torso with 2 arms and a tail. When I played the original Dead Space, I always called them vampire monsters because they had either fingers or claws. They had 2 things that came out of their mouth, and they looked like vampires to me. This is my small negative. I don't know if I just killed them too quickly. Again, I played the game on medium. They were pretty tough. Not once in my entire Let's Play did any of them do the shit that they did in Dead Space 1, which I think I've heard people criticize this. They fucked up some of the animations on things. I remember, you can't lie to me, I remember in Dead Space 1, those 2-armed tail motherfuckers would be far enough away from you, and they get up on the 2 arms and run at you. Not once in the entire game did any of them do this. Not once. And I was always on edge because that always freaked me out in the original game, and it just wasn't in this one. So if anybody from EA or EA Motive sees this video, when you make Dead Space 2, fucking fix that. But other gameplay improvements that they made were, of course, the buttons. This plays like a third-person shooter now. You have a dedicated button to using stasis packs, med packs, and, of course, a dedicated reload button, which is a good thing. I can't tell whether or not Isaac moves clunkier or smoother. Again, some of the animations are a little off, but it's not a hindrance. But I feel like they changed the boot stomp. It's still a mighty boot, but it's not as, I don't know, thunderous as it once was. Because you're not in power armor. I've heard so many people, oh, he's in power. You're not in power armor. Stop calling it fucking power armor. It's not power armor. He's in an engineering suit. It's big, it's bulky, it's covered in armor because engineers have to mess with a lot of machinery and they kind of want to keep their body safe. But I remember the original boot being heavy and hard. I do like the idea that you could repeatedly stomp. Granted, it's not as fast as it was in Dead Space 2. Maybe they held off on that for Dead Space 2 Remake. But the changes that they made to gameplay sections, I think, are a good thing. There were just noticeable differences. Like, for instance, I remember, I think I got grabbed a couple of times. Sorry, mucus. I think I got grabbed a couple of times, and there were instances where, you know, in the original game, getting grabbed was a little bit jarring, disorienting, but in this one, it felt a little bit more natural. Like, they grab you, they pull you, the camera swings around, and it's visible, and it's a little bit easier for me to realize I'm being grabbed and bitten. I need to hammer the X button and get free. But overall, I think that the gameplay changes they made, mostly the zero-G stuff, good additions. Good additions. Let's talk about the environmental design, the level design. They changed around the ship quite a bit. There were sections that I didn't go into in the original one. There were completely new sections, inner workings of the ship, background areas, you know, maintenance areas, They changed around how some of the puzzles work. They changed the entire centrifuge room, which I thought was really cool. But I really enjoyed the main thing that I did that I didn't actually record, because I recorded it and then I didn't want to go back through it and record more. The main thing I enjoyed was the fact that the entire ship was actually interconnected. That is actually a good thing for me, because after I beat the game, I went through it one more time very quickly with the one gun trophy, and then when I got to the end of that New Game Plus playthrough, I had a bajillion fucking power nodes. I leveled up all my guns to get another trophy, leveled up my gear to get another trophy, and then I went through and I basically explored the ship for about 2 hours using different guns, and I had to kill 30 enemies with each gun. And because the ship was interconnected, there was no longer a limit on how many enemies I could kill in a level. I literally got to the end of the game, like right before I go to the planet, and I roamed around medical, I roamed around engineering and mining, I roamed around hydroponics, and enemies just spawned like fucking crazy coming after me. And it seemed kind of tense, because at that point the ship is failing, you're constantly getting warning messages, and it really was intense and fun and more action-y than anything else. But, hello. Hey. But, I enjoyed thoroughly that the ship was interconnected. They didn't exactly do what, a lot of games now are doing, most notably God of War, the one-shot thing, which I noticed they were sort of trying to do, which is, it's interesting, it's neat. Nobody likes loading screens. Nobody cares for that. Callisto Protocol got lambasted for, like, the number of vents and shimmying you do and all this shit. But I think they did a really good job with designing the ship and making it interconnected and making everything make sense. I thought it was very, very good. Another gameplay thing that they changed was, of course, my brain just went right out the window. Another gameplay thing that they changed was that New Game Plus actually had extra stuff. It said that I was going to run into new enemies. There were no new enemies to my knowledge. I'm assuming that it was putting enemies in different places and changing it, but after that, I don't know. But I like that New Game Plus had new stuff in the fact that you were finding marker fragments, and using those marker fragments at a certain spot on the ship would change the ending of the game and give you a secret ending. So that, of course, leads me into talking about the story. The story of Dead Space in this remake is very good. This is how I know somebody gave a shit. Because you could have done just a basic graphical overhaul. Oh, I didn't mention the gameplay thing where now you can literally fillet enemies. The peeling system is very good. Peeling system is awesome. But they changed things about the story. Number one, unitology is much, much, much more prominent in the remake. People are constantly talking about unitologist beliefs. There's unease, this weird, strange religion and the secret cult-like nature of it. But there was also mentions of things that weren't hinted to until Dead Space 2. Obviously, because at that point they had fleshed out the story a little more and figured out what they wanted to do. But when I heard Mercer mention convergence, I was like, oh shit, they're going all in on this. Like, nobody who plays the remake and hasn't played the other games is going to know what the fuck convergence is. But for those of us who have played Dead Space 2 and Dead Space 3, we know that that is a event that can do some things. But they changed the story around. One thing that I feel like took a hit, this is not necessarily a negative towards voice acting. I'm just going to say this. Let me get the whole thought out. Isaac talks now, which isn't a problem. I think he doesn't react as much as he should to things that are happening around him. Like, I like that he didn't talk during the game. Like, when I'm playing the game, he just shuts the fuck up. But whenever characters were interacting with him, he talked. But here's the thing. Dead Space has a twist. And I'll talk about Nicole in just a minute. But Dead Space has a twist. And the twist always made sense to me because Isaac was a mute protagonist. He didn't say anything. I always took this as his mental faculties were breaking down. And of course, in the remake, they had much more prominent effects of the marker happening to you and your crew. But I always assumed that Isaac had watched the entire recording of Nicole His mind broke, and then he blacked it out, and he was mentally, visibly unwell throughout the game. That's why, you know, he didn't speak. Kendra and Hammond led him around, and the twist made sense. Now, however, it doesn't feel like it makes a lot of sense, because even at the beginning of the game, it's like, oh, you've been watching that on repeat, huh? Did you watch the whole fucking thing? It doesn't make any sense, because wouldn't they have seen it as well? So I don't know. I don't feel like he's as mentally ill as he should be from not even before he even reaches the ship and gets influenced by the marker. His brain was broke because his girlfriend is dead, but he's going to see her. This is classic Silent Hill 2, James Sunderland all over it. But James knows what he did. James knows what he did. But I liked a lot of the changes to the story. A lot of people probably aren't too big on the changes made to Kendra. I think they did good. Anybody that doesn't know going into it that Kendra is a piece of shit is going to be endeared towards her a little bit more. She's a little too confrontational with Hammond, but I knew not to trust her. But even at the end of the game when, you know, she gets slapped by the hive mind, Isaac's still trying to save her, and I'm just like, let her go, dude. Fuck her. She's a piece of shit. She was going to leave you for dead again. But probably my favorite thing that they changed to make sense was the fact that Isaac was seeing another member of the Ishimura as Nicole, and she was probably in return seeing Isaac as her boyfriend Jacob. I think it was Cross from Hydroponics. That was interesting. That was excellent. It made sense. It was a good change. Another really cool change was, of course, that secret ending. I don't know if I should be worried about spoilers in this, but if you've made it this far in the video, you've probably beaten the game. You've probably beaten the originals. The secret ending is amazing. I didn't record it, but I played through and I watched it. Holy fuck, is that good shit. The idea that he is leaving the planet still influenced by the marker, still seeing Nicole. That to me says that he is going to be unhinged and wild in the Dead Space 2 remake, which I look forward to. I look forward to seeing more interactions with him and Nicole as he comes to grips with the fact that she is dead. And then, of course, gets betrayed at the end, because, you know, that happens. But overall, the Dead Space remake is very good. Am I excited for the idea of a remake of Dead Space 2? Yes. As long as these are the guys that are doing it, and as long as EA keeps their goddamn fingers out of it. There were, of course, the DLC skins for Dead Space Remake, but I'm not worried about that. But, like, I really need EA to keep their fingers out of it. If they remake Dead Space 2... Here's the thing. Dead Space 2 had a multiplayer mode. We don't need it. You can take that money and put it into the campaign. We do not need to bring back whatever the fuck the mode was called where people play as engineers and necromorphs. We don't need it. Because I have this horrific idea that if they do remake Dead Space 2 and they do the multiplayer, that's where all the microtransactions and battle passes and a fucking battle royale mode is going to go. We don't need it. Make Dead Space 2, integrate the severed DLC into it, and leave it the fuck alone. That's all I want. But no, the remake was good. I stand by the things that I said before, that we didn't necessarily need a remake, because everybody's like, oh, this is the definitive way to play Dead Space. Really? Because in Dead Space, original Dead Space, I get all my gear right from the beginning of the game. I can shoot that one vent, and then I can laugh as a necromorph ignores my fellow crew and follows me around the lobby. That video is still up on my channel. Go look for it. Type in my name, type in Dead Space New Game Plus Glitch. Boom. That's not in the remake, and I showed it in my last video, and I was sad that I couldn't do it. It's a disappointment. They should have left that in. But whatever. I get it. They were probably worried about people in the one gun achievement. Either way, Dead Space Remake is good. I have sounded like trash this entire video. I am mucusy. I'm going to go take some more Mucinex. I've got to go to work tonight. And I hope that you guys enjoyed the video. I hope that you enjoyed Dead Space Remake. Let me know what you thought about the game. Let me know if you're excited for the idea of Dead Space 2 getting a remake. And a little side piece. The Legend of Dragoon is coming to PS4 and PS5, and you're out of your fucking mind if you think I'm not playing it for the channel. I will see you guys in the next video. Hopefully I will sound better. Take care, and Altman be praised.